Hi, my name is Tanya Shannon, and I will be discussing issues that arise in international mitigation. First off, to make sure we are all on the same track, let's go over what international mitigation is. We all know from our reading that mitigation is the effort to reduce loss of life and property by lessening the impact of disasters. Mitigation occurs on the local, state or regional, and national level. It is only logical to progress to the international level with supranational governments. Supranational governments that have taken up the task of international mitigation include the United Nations, the European Union, the Organization of Security and Cooperation in Europe, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and the League of Arab States, amongst others. There are several issues that can arise when nations or international stakeholders come together to mitigate perceived hazards people of many nations are at risk to. 1. There is no hierarchical decision-making process in international organizations. Everything is collaborative. Being the president of a country is cool, however, when you get to the United Nations, you're in a room full of presidents and prime ministers. You end up not being that special, and you're definitely not the commander-in-chief. Number 2, supranational organizations where international mitigation occurs is based on voluntary participation of each individual country. In international mitigation, like all international cooperation, it is difficult to force nations to comply with mitigation treaties or agreements, or to punish them if they underperform. Let's look at the Kyoto Protocol for an example. The Kyoto Protocol was a protocol by the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. It set a number of binding obligations on industrialized countries to reduce their emissions of greenhouse gases. It was a mitigation effort to combat climate change. If you look at this image, the green areas represent the 191 nation-states who signed the Kyoto Protocol. The salmon color and gray colors represent the countries that did not ratify the Kyoto Protocol or took no position. These countries include the United States, Afghanistan, Andorra, and Southern Sudan. The international community that largely did sign the Kyoto Protocol cannot force countries that did not sign to abide by the same regulations. If you look at Canada, it's a dark red color. Canada and the Kyoto Protocol is a perfect example that even if a country initially agrees to take part in international mitigation efforts, but then underperforms, it can still back out, and it is difficult to punish them for their underperformance. Canada initially signed the Kyoto Protocol. They agreed to reduce their emissions by 6% from the level of greenhouse gases released in 1990 by 2012. However, 20 years later, in 2012, instead of a 6% reduction, there was a 17% increase in emissions. Instead of facing enormous financial penalties, as the Environmental Minister Peter Kent put it, Canada backed out of the Kyoto Protocol. Participation in international mitigation is voluntary, and therefore any penalties for underperformance is also self-imposed. Number 3, stakeholders in international mitigation operate on different information and prioritize mitigation efforts differently. How big of a risk exists and how high of a priority the mitigation efforts should be differ between stakeholders. Developing just consensus on facts and priorities within one country, such as the United States, is a daunting task. Only 1 out of the 8 GOP nominees for president during the GOP primaries in 2012 maintained a firm position that he recognized climate change was real and was caused by humans. There is not a consensus on how to stop the proliferation of nuclear weapons to mitigate potential nuclear war. The United States, the European Union, and numerous East Asian countries have come out against Iran's development of nuclear power. However, the Arab League chief Amir Moussa stated that it was their belief that Israel's nuclear program posed a greater threat than Iran in 2009. Perspectives and the accepted facts influence how severe a risk is assessed to be and therefore how high a priority it is. International mitigation, like all international cooperation, is difficult. International hazards such as climate change, deforestation, nuclear proliferation, and terrorist organizations have been prominent issues in the past and look only to grow in the coming decades. Incremental achievements among smaller groups are easier to achieve. However, to effect greater change, cooperation amongst governments, non-state actors, and other stakeholders will have to be improved upon and expanded in order to enact greater change. Thank you so much for watching my video, and I look forward to all of yours.